Arieforce One is an absolutely insane roller coaster built by Rocky Mountain Construction, opening in the year 2023, and it may be the most out-of-place roller coaster ever built. I got the chance to go to Fun Spot America Atlanta in 2024, and while most of the park wasn't open, this glorified arcade did open their signature roller coaster that day, and I got to experience it a total of 13 times. When you're driving up to the park, you'll see this massive RMC truss structure with American colors, and you pull into perhaps the smallest ever parking lot for an amusement park. Fun Spot Atlanta is a pay-per-ride park, however you can buy a wristband so you can ride as many times as you want. That's what I did, and if you want to ride this multiple times, that's what I'd recommend doing. To get your tickets, you can go inside of the arcade, and you may not even need tickets. They didn't even always check for tickets or wristbands whenever they dispatched the train. Anyways, to get to the ride's entrance, you must first go under the ride's quadruple down and massive double up, then you turn to your left, and the station will be right ahead of you. The whole queue line is pretty much under the station, and I don't imagine it gets filled up very often. I was always on within a couple of rides, and they were running only one train, which wasn't a problem because the park was absolutely dead. When you get into the station, you're greeted with 10 rows to choose from. However, when I was there were only 6 rows to choose from in order to maximize efficiency. That way the staff didn't have to load and unload each car, and again, there was essentially nobody there. Out of the 10 rows, I would highly recommend choosing the front row as it will be the most intense and aggressive row, and I would recommend sitting on the right side, the side over the blue rail. Arieforce One was actually my 100th roller coaster, and while I was in the station, there were 2 other coaster enthusiasts in line for the front row, and the ride was broken down when I first got there. When they got it up and running, they told me to take the front seat because it was a special credit for me. I actually saw them at a later date while working at Kentucky Kingdom, and I got to check the restraints for Woodland Run. Anyways, back to the experience. When you first sit down for Arieforce One, you'll have your typical RMC restraints with the lap bar and shin guard, and as long as your restraint shows up as green and you're above the minimum height requirement of 48 inches, you are good to ride. The ride operators will not push your restraint down at all. They will still check to make sure it's locked though. This means that you can leave your restraint a good 6 to 7 inches above your lap. There is also a seatbelt, and there were some moments when the seatbelt was doing all the work, when I did not touch the lap bar one bit during the airtime moments, and it was a little scary. They do have storage bins in the station, so you will not need to rent a locker for this ride. Once the whole train is clear, you will dispatch out of your station and go into a couple of little bunny hops. And if you're sitting in the back row, you will actually get sent out of your seat during this tiny little airtime hills. As for everybody else, they're just there to wake you up. Start climbing up your steep and swift lift hill to a height of 155 feet and get a great view of the massive trees in front of you. Oh, it's also really loud. Just ahead of you is your 83-degree drop, which, like all first drops, is better in the back row as it pulls you over, but the front row will still get decent airtime. At the bottom of the drop is where you'll hit your top speed of 64 miles per hour, which honestly, it's very easy to believe. It feels extremely fast. The ride keeps very good pacing throughout the whole layout. The next element is what's called a Raven Truss Dive, which is basically just a fancy term for a dive loop. Entering this element, it banks you to the right before violently inverting you to the left and diving under itself, and you get some incredible airtime and hang time during this element. Up next, you travel over a nice ejector-filled airtime hill, turning you slightly to the left, and then you enter the zero-G stall, which is a fantastic element. It leaves you dangling weightless for what feels like an eternity, and it just feels very floaty. That's how I would describe it. Exit the element and fly over an outer bank turn to the left, which will eject you out of your seat, delivering some fantastic sustained ejector airtime, and it is certainly one of the highlights of the ride. Pretty much every element is a highlight on Arieforce. From the moment you crest the lift hill to the moment you arrive to the brake run, it is relentless. Anyways, enter into a double up. The first pop is alright, nothing crazy compared to the rest of the ride, but it is still a really good moment for airtime. The second hill over is a little stronger than the step up, but it's not the strongest part of the ride. But compared to any other coaster, it would be a crazy moment. Next, fly into the arcade roll, which is just a 0G roll, but it flies over the arcade building, so it gets a fancy name. It's a very fast element, very whippy, and it will send you turning to the right, where you'll travel over a very fast outer bank. And this moment right here is why I prefer the blue side. It just sends you out of your seat a little more aggressively than the red side. Bank back to the right and keep turning, and take another tight inversion that switches you banking back to the left and turn left into your final set of airtime hills. You step up and then you go into the quadruple down, which may just be the most aggressive series of airtime hills I've ever ridden. On my last rides, I literally pushed the lap bar down on myself because it was so painful. It was a fun kind of painful though. It didn't leave me in pain. The airtime was just really sharp. Anyways, just when you're about out of breath from the relentless ride experience, hop up once more and slam into the brake run. And I mean slam. You're getting airtime from that hop up, and then you just get sent forward. It is a lot to handle, even for a coaster enthusiast, and this was part of the reason I pushed the lap bar down during the quadruple down. This may be the most sharp airtime moment I've ever experienced, and to get sent forward right after that kind of hurt. You then turn to your right and back into the station, and that concludes your 3,400 foot long experience on Arieforce One. What did we learn? Well, Arieforce is a very relentless ride experience, that is for sure. But even with the ride's aggressive nature, it is actually very smooth, like glass smooth, which is much appreciated when you have a ride as relentless as Arieforce One. Once again, the front row is my favorite row. The airtime is just stronger up there, but every row on this ride is still amazing. I would highly recommend going to Fun Spot America Atlanta and checking out this absolutely insane Rocky Mountain construction creation, especially if you're passing nearby on the way somewhere, such as Six Flags Over Georgia. That is going to wrap up this review. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe to Stormy Coasters if you'd like to see more videos about roller coasters. I hope you have an amazing day.